Ruth was 32 years old when the city finally decided she did not matter. It did not announce it loudly. Cities never do. They whisper neglect into corners and wait for silence to answer back. For Ruth, that silence came each morning before sunrise, when she rose from a thin mattress laid directly on the floor of a single rented room. The walls were cracked like dry skin, and the roof leaked whenever the rain grew angry. Still, it was the only place that did not ask her questions. She earned her living washing clothes by hand. From dawn until late afternoon, Ruth bent over buckets of water behind wealthier homes, scrubbing away stains that told stories of other people's lives. Wine spills from parties she was never invited to, children's dirt from playgrounds she never had time to see, sweat from men who complained about exhaustion without knowing what it truly meant. By the time she finished, her fingers were swollen, her nails cracked, and her back screamed in quiet protest. But she never complained. Complaining did not buy food. Her parents had died years apart. Her mother first, worn down by sickness and unpaid hospital visits. Her father later, crushed by a delivery truck whose owner never appeared in court. After the burials, relatives came with sympathy on their tongues and calculations in their eyes. When there was nothing left to inherit, they disappeared. Ruth learned early that poverty was not just the absence of money. It was the absence of witnesses. Each evening, after returning from work, she passed beneath the long concrete bridge that connected the rich part of the city to everywhere else. Under that bridge lived those the city had fully abandoned, men with hollow eyes, women with babies tied to their backs, and one man who always sat apart. He never shouted. He never stretched out his hand aggressively like the others. He sat quietly on a flattened cardboard box, leaning against a pillar, his legs stretched before him as if resting after a long journey. His clothes were torn but clean in a strange way, as though he washed them carefully despite their age. His beard was trimmed, his eyes steady. The first time Ruth noticed him, he was humming softly to himself. She did not know why that sound followed her home that night. The second evening, she greeted him without thinking. "Good evening." He looked up, surprised, then smiled slowly. "Good evening, sister." From that day, something shifted, small, almost invisible. Ruth began to save a portion of her food. Not much. Just enough to share. She told herself it was kindness, nothing more. But kindness, she would later learn, is rarely harmless. By the third week they talked. Not about money. Not about hope. Just about the weather, tiredness, and how long days could feel when no one waited for you. He told her his name was Samuel. He never asked hers until she offered it. "You walk like someone carrying stones in her chest," he said once. Ruth laughed for the first time in days. Under that bridge, where the city dumped its forgotten people, Ruth did not yet know she had begun walking toward a life that would break her and rebuild her at the same time. Samuel became part of Ruth's evenings the way dusk became part of the sky, slowly, without permission, and impossible to ignore once it settled. At first, she told herself it was habit. After long days of washing clothes, her body moved on its own, steering her steps toward the bridge without thought. The noise of traffic above thundered like a restless sea, but beneath it, there was a strange stillness. A world within a world. Samuel was always there before her. Sometimes he sat with his back against the concrete pillar, eyes closed, palms resting on his knees as if in prayer. Other times he stared out at the road beyond the bridge, watching people hurry past with their lives folded neatly into bags and briefcases. He never looked bitter. That was what unsettled Ruth most. One evening, she arrived later than usual, hunger gnawing sharply at her stomach. She had earned less that day. One of her regular customers complained about soap residue and refused to pay full price. She almost walked past the bridge, telling herself she had nothing to give. Samuel saw her anyway. "You are late," he said gently. She sighed and dropped beside him on the bare ground. "Work refused to let me go." He nodded, as though he understood exactly what that meant. Ruth hesitated before opening the small nylon bag she carried. Inside was a portion of boiled yam, smaller than usual. She broke it in half without ceremony and handed him the larger piece. "You should eat more," he protested softly. She shook her head. "I'm already full." They both knew it was a lie, but neither challenged it. That night, she noticed something new. Samuel ate slowly, carefully, as if honoring the food. He did not rush. He did not waste a single bite. When he finished, he folded the nylon bag neatly and handed it back to her. "You live like a man who expects tomorrow," Ruth said before she could stop herself. Samuel looked at her for a long moment. "And you live like someone who has been disappointed by yesterday." The words struck her deeper than she expected. She had not spoken much about her life to anyone in years. Yet here was a man who owned nothing but understood too much. Over the following weeks, their conversations deepened, not quickly, but steadily, like water wearing away stone. Samuel spoke little of his past. He said only that life had taken things from him, one by one, until he decided to stop chasing what kept running away. Ruth did not press him. She knew too well how some wounds bled when touched. She told him about her parents, about the silence that followed their deaths, about the way people looked at her differently once they realized she had no one to speak for her. "Does it not anger you?" Samuel asked one night. "To work so hard and remain invisible?" Ruth stared at the ground. "Anger is a luxury," she said. "Some of us can only afford endurance." Samuel smiled sadly. "Endurance is expensive too. It costs the heart." Under the bridge, amid the forgotten and the ignored, something fragile took root. It was not romance yet. It was recognition, the quiet relief of being seen. Ruth did not know it then, but she had already begun to desire something she had never allowed herself before. Not wealth, not rescue, but companionship that did not demand she become someone else. And Samuel, watching her walk away each night, began to fear the truth he was carrying might one day destroy the only honesty he had left. Ruth began to notice the hunger before she noticed the desire. It crept into her bones quietly, settling deeper than the ache in her back or the cuts on her fingers. This hunger was different. It was not for food alone. It was for something she could not name without fear of sounding foolish. Each evening, she found herself counting the hours until sunset. The city did not soften at night, it only changed its cruelty. During the day, people were too busy to notice suffering. At night, suffering became entertainment, something to step over or stare at briefly before moving on. Beneath the bridge, the air grew colder, the shadows longer, and the noise above louder, as if the city wanted to remind those below of everything they would never reach. Samuel was always waiting. Sometimes he brought small surprises, nothing of value, but everything of meaning. Once, it was a wild flower he had found growing stubbornly through a crack in the pavement. Another time, it was a story about a man who lost everything except his name, and how even that began to fade when no one spoke it aloud. Ruth laughed more during those evenings than she had in years. The laughter surprised her. It escaped before she could trap it behind caution and pride. When she laughed, Samuel watched her as though committing the sound to memory. One night, rain fell hard and sudden. Ruth arrived soaked, her clothes clinging heavily to her skin. She tried to shake off the water, embarrassed by her appearance. Samuel rose immediately, holding out the only dry cloth he owned. "You'll catch cold," he said. She hesitated. "And you?" "I am already used to discomfort," he replied. She wrapped the cloth around her shoulders, overwhelmed by the tenderness of the gesture. No one had worried about her health in a long time. They sat close that night, shoulders nearly touching, sharing roasted corn wrapped in old newspaper. The rain softened the world, blurring its sharp edges. For a while, they said nothing. It was Ruth who broke the silence. "Do you ever wish your life had been different?" she asked. Samuel considered carefully before answering. "I wish I had understood earlier that wealth does not protect the heart. It only distracts it." She looked at him, startled. "You speak like a man who once had everything." He smiled faintly. "We all think we have had everything at some point. It is only later we realize what was missing." Ruth accepted the answer, though something in his tone lingered in her mind. As days turned into weeks, the bridge became more than a meeting place. It became a refuge. When Ruth's landlord raised the rent without warning, Samuel listened as she cried quietly into her hands. When Samuel woke with pain in his legs from sleeping on concrete, Ruth massaged them with oil meant for her own aching joints. They shared what little they had: food, warmth, stories, silence. Desire grew slowly, disguised as comfort. Ruth began to imagine a future not defined by survival alone. It was a small future. A room with a door that locked properly. Shared meals. Someone to sit beside her when exhaustion weighed too heavily. She never imagined wealth. She imagined peace. Samuel felt the desire too, but his was laced with fear. Each night, as Ruth walked away, he wrestled with the truth he carried like a hidden blade. He had come to the bridge seeking anonymity, seeking escape from betrayal and greed. He had not planned to fall in love. But love had found him anyway, simple, unadorned, and dangerous. One evening, as Ruth stood to leave, Samuel spoke before caution could stop him. "If the world turns against us," he asked quietly, "would you still sit beside me?" Ruth answered without hesitation, "I already am." In that moment, desire took shape, not as longing for more, but as the courage to choose less together. The city noticed Ruth the same way it always noticed women like her, when they stepped out of their assigned place. It began with whispers. At the houses where she washed clothes, eyes followed her longer than before. Conversations paused when she entered rooms. One afternoon, a woman whose laundry Ruth had done for years leaned close and lowered her voice. "They say you spend your nights under the bridge now." Ruth kept scrubbing. "I passed there on my way home." The woman clicked her tongue. "Passing is different from sitting." By the next week, the whispers had grown teeth. Children pointed when Ruth walked by. Men laughed openly. Women shook their heads as though watching a slow, deliberate mistake. Poverty, she had learned, was tolerable in a woman. But dignity, chosen freely and shared with the wrong person, was not. One evening, Ruth arrived beneath the bridge to find Samuel watching her face carefully. "They are talking about you," he said softly. She shrugged, though her chest tightened. "They always do. Today, they've just found something new to say." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You should stop coming here." The words hit her harder than any insult. She stared at him. "Is that what you want?" "No," he said quickly. "It is what they want. And they will not stop." Ruth laughed bitterly. "Since when has the world needed my permission to be cruel?" But the cruelty escalated. A customer accused her of stealing. Another withheld payment, claiming Ruth's kind could not be trusted. The final blow came when her landlord warned her that her presence was attracting the wrong attention. "You will leave by the end of the month," he said flatly, "or I will call the authorities." Ruth walked to the bridge that night with her heart in pieces. She told Samuel everything, her words tumbling out between sobs she could no longer contain. He listened in silence, fists clenched, eyes dark. "This is my fault," he said. "No," she replied fiercely. "It is theirs. For thinking poverty is contagious." He shook his head. "You are paying a price for standing beside me." Ruth wiped her tears. "I have paid prices all my life. At least this one is for something I chose." Samuel stood abruptly and paced beneath the bridge. For the first time, she saw anger break through his calm. "There are things you do not know," he said. "Things that could protect you." "Then tell me," she pleaded. He stopped, facing her. His eyes were filled with something like grief. "I cannot. Not yet." That night Ruth returned to her room knowing she might soon lose it. Desire collided with reality. Love, she realized, demanded more than tenderness. It demanded endurance. And beneath the bridge, Samuel faced the truth he had been avoiding. Staying silent would cost Ruth everything, but speaking might cost them both. The day Ruth lost her room, the city did not pause to watch. It rarely did. Her landlord stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, eyes fixed somewhere above her head, as if looking directly at her would make him complicit in her misfortune. "You were warned," he said. "I cannot have trouble here." Ruth did not argue. There was nothing left to bargain with. She folded her clothes slowly, deliberately, as though moving too quickly might make the truth heavier. Each item carried a memory, days of exhaustion, small victories, nights she cried herself to sleep and woke up anyway. By sunset, she carried everything she owned in one battered bag. She did not know where she was going. Only where she was not welcome. Her feet carried her to the bridge. Samuel saw her before she reached him. He rose at once, his breath catching when he saw the bag. "They did it," he said quietly. She nodded. "I am officially homeless now." The word felt strange in her mouth. Homeless. As if a home had ever truly belonged to her. Samuel's face hardened with a decision forming behind his eyes. "You cannot stay here." Ruth laughed, a sharp sound edged with fatigue. "You mean here, under the bridge? Or here beside you?" "Both," he said. "You deserve better than this." She dropped the bag and faced him fully. "Better than what? Hunger? Loneliness? Being invisible?" Her voice trembled, but she did not lower it. "I have lived with all those things already. At least here, I am not alone." Samuel turned away, pressing his hands against the cold concrete pillar, as if steadying himself. "You think this is a choice," he said. "But it is a sacrifice you should not have to make." Ruth stepped closer. "No one offered me an easier one." There was a long silence, broken only by the distant roar of traffic above them. Finally, Samuel spoke. "If you stay," he said, "life will grow harder. People will treat you worse. I cannot promise safety." Ruth reached for his hand. "I am not asking for promises. I am choosing." That night, Ruth slept beneath the bridge for the first time. The ground was unforgiving, the cold seeping into her bones. Yet when she woke in the darkness and felt Samuel's presence beside her, something settled inside her chest. Fear remained, but it was no longer alone. Days passed, then weeks. Life beneath the bridge stripped away what little pride Ruth had left. She woke earlier to avoid the worst looks. She bathed from borrowed water. She ate less so Samuel could eat more. Sometimes, they went hungry together. And yet, there was tenderness. Samuel found cardboard to soften the ground. Ruth learned which hours brought the least harassment. They shared stories at night, whispering dreams they pretended were jokes. But conflict followed them relentlessly. Once, a group of men insulted Ruth openly, calling her foolish for choosing a beggar over survival. Samuel stepped forward, his voice calm but firm, and something in his posture made them hesitate before backing away. That night, Ruth studied him closely. "You are not who you pretend to be," she said quietly. Samuel met her gaze, his eyes heavy. "I am exactly who I am afraid to reveal." The words lingered between them. Ruth lay awake long after Samuel slept, staring at the concrete above her. She wondered how love, something so fragile, had become the heaviest thing she carried. Yet even in hunger, even in shame, she did not regret her choice. For the first time in her life, survival was no longer her only goal. Living beneath the bridge taught Ruth lessons no one ever volunteered to teach. Time behaved differently there. Days stretched endlessly, measured not by clocks but by hunger, by the heat of the sun on concrete, by how long kindness lasted before the world grew impatient again. Nights came with sharper edges, cold winds, sudden footsteps, the fear that never fully slept. Ruth learned to listen. She learned the difference between footsteps that meant danger and those that meant nothing at all. She learned how to make herself small without shrinking completely. She learned how to hold on to dignity even when everything else was negotiable. Samuel became her anchor. He woke before dawn to check their surroundings, always alert, always watchful. He never spoke of fear, but Ruth sensed it in the way his body stayed tense even while resting. Sometimes she caught him staring into the distance with an expression that frightened her, not despair, but calculation. "Do you regret this?" he asked one morning as they shared a cup of thin porridge someone had donated. Ruth shook her head. "Do you?" He hesitated. "I regret that you had to choose it." That answer stayed with her. Life beneath the bridge hardened Ruth, but it also softened her in unexpected ways. She stopped caring about the stairs. She stopped explaining herself. She found strength in small victories, finding clean water, earning a little money mending clothes, laughing despite everything. But the world did not forgive her defiance. One afternoon, a woman Ruth once worked for approached her near the bridge. "You could still come back," the woman said. "There is work. But not if you continue this arrangement." Ruth understood the condition without it being spoken aloud. She looked at Samuel, sitting quietly nearby, his eyes lowered. The woman followed her gaze and scoffed. "He will drag you down until there is nothing left." Ruth turned back calmly. "I have been at the bottom before. I survived." The woman left shaking her head. That night, Samuel confronted her. "You should have taken the offer," he said. "You are starving because of me." Ruth's voice cracked. "I am starving because the world decided love must be earned with comfort." Silence followed. Samuel walked away beneath the bridge, pacing restlessly. Ruth watched him, a deep unease growing in her chest. She sensed something coming, something unavoidable. Later that night, she woke to find Samuel sitting apart from her, his head bowed, his hands clasped tightly. "What are you hiding?" she asked softly. He did not answer. "You protect me like someone with power," she continued. "You speak like someone who has lost too much to risk losing again." Samuel's shoulders trembled slightly. "I came here to disappear," he said at last. "To be unseen. To forget the life I left behind." Ruth sat up slowly. And now, he whispered, "I am afraid staying will destroy you. And leaving will destroy me." Fear settled between them like a third presence. Ruth reached for his hand. "Whatever you are carrying, you don't have to carry it alone." Samuel closed his eyes, pain etched deeply across his face. But still, he said nothing. Above them, cars rushed forward, ignorant of the quiet battle unfolding beneath their wheels. Ruth sensed that change was coming, whether she wanted it or not. And she did not yet know that the next time she woke, Samuel would be gone. Ruth woke before dawn with a feeling she could not name. The air beneath the bridge felt different, too still, too quiet. The familiar sounds of Samuel's breathing, the soft shift of his body beside her, were gone. At first, she told herself he had only stepped away, perhaps to relieve himself or check their surroundings as he often did. But as minutes stretched into an hour, unease tightened around her chest. "Samuel?" she called softly. Only the echo of her own voice answered. She stood, heart pounding, scanning the shadows beneath the bridge. His cardboard bedding was gone. So was the small cloth she had used the night before. Everything that belonged to him, meager as it was, had vanished. Panic rose sharply. She searched the area, calling his name louder now, ignoring the curious looks of others who lived nearby. No one had seen him leave. No one had heard anything unusual. It was as if he had dissolved into the darkness without leaving a trace. By morning, reality set in. Samuel was gone. Ruth sat on the cold ground, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the empty space where he had slept. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened to him? Had he been taken? Hurt? Or worse, had he simply chosen to leave? The thoughts sliced deeper than fear ever could. Hours passed. Hunger clawed at her, but she could not eat. Memories flooded her mind, his voice, his calm presence, the way he listened without judgment. Each recollection felt like reopening a wound. By afternoon, whispers began again. Did he abandon her? Beggar men never stay. She should have known better. Ruth felt each word like a stone thrown at her back. As night fell, despair wrapped itself around her. She cried openly, no longer caring who saw. For the first time since meeting Samuel, she felt truly alone. Days followed without meaning. She remained beneath the bridge, hoping, foolishly, that he would return. Each sound of footsteps made her heart leap, only to sink again when it was not him. She replayed their last conversation endlessly, searching for signs she had missed. Had he been planning this all along? The thought shattered her. On the 5th day, a man in a clean suit approached the bridge, calling her name. "Ruth," he said carefully. She looked up, startled. No one beneath the bridge ever used names. "You are requested elsewhere," he continued. "Please come with me." Fear surged. "Requested by who?" He hesitated. "By someone who owes you an explanation." Ruth's legs trembled as she stood. Something told her this moment was the beginning of the end, or the beginning of something she was not ready to face. She followed the man away from the bridge, leaving behind the only place that had felt like home. And beneath the roar of the city, her heart braced itself for a truth that would change everything she thought she knew about love, sacrifice, and loss. The car moved through parts of the city Ruth had only ever passed through in buses she could not afford. Wide roads. Silent streets. Houses that sat far apart, guarded by walls tall enough to block out the world. Each turn tightened the knot in her stomach. The man beside her said nothing, his eyes fixed ahead, his face carefully empty. Ruth's hands trembled in her lap. She thought of Samuel constantly, his bare feet on concrete, his quiet voice, the way he folded food wrappers as if orders still mattered. Nothing in her memory fit with this place they were approaching. The car stopped before a gate so large it felt obscene. It opened without a sound. Ruth stepped out slowly, her worn slippers sinking into manicured grass that felt foreign beneath her feet. The house before her was not merely large, it was imposing. Cold. Beautiful in a way that did not invite warmth. "This is a mistake," she whispered. The man gestured toward the door. "Please." Inside, the air smelled clean, sharp, untouched by hardship. Marble floors reflected her thin frame, her tired eyes, her clothes still smelling faintly of smoke and street dust. She had never felt so visible, and so small. They led her into a wide sitting room. And there he was. Samuel stood near a tall window, dressed in clothes Ruth had never seen on him, pressed, fitted, unmistakably expensive. His hair was neatly trimmed, his beard groomed. He looked whole, powerful, unrecognizable. For a moment, Ruth could not breathe. Her knees buckled, and she would have fallen if not for the chair behind her. The room blurred as the truth struck her like a blow. "You," she whispered. "You are alive." Samuel turned slowly. The relief on his face was immediate, but it did not bring her comfort. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." Silence filled the space between them, thick, suffocating. "You left," Ruth said, her voice trembling. "Without a word. I had no choice." She laughed then, a hollow, broken sound. "You always had choices. You just didn't share them with me." Samuel stepped closer. "Ruth, listen." "No." She stood, backing away. "Tell me first. Was any of it real?" His face tightened. "Every moment." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why pretend to be poor? Why let me sleep on concrete while you lived here?" Samuel closed his eyes. "Because this house has never been a home. Because everyone I loved before loved what I could give them. I needed to know who would love me when I had nothing." Ruth felt something inside her crack. "So I was a test?" she whispered. "No," he said fiercely. "You were the answer." Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You let me lose everything. My work. My home. My dignity." Samuel dropped to his knees before her. "I know," he said, voice breaking. "And I would give up everything I own to undo that pain." She stared at him. This man who had slept hungry beside her, who had watched her choose hardship without telling her she didn't have to. The truth changed everything. Love did not vanish, but it transformed into something heavier, more complicated. Ruth turned away, heart aching with betrayal and understanding all at once. "I need time," she said, "because the man I loved lived under a bridge. And I don't know who you are." Samuel bowed his head. And in that moment, wealth meant nothing. Ruth did not sleep that night. They gave her a guest room larger than any place she had ever lived, with a bed so soft it felt unreal beneath her tired body. Clean sheets, warm water, food placed gently on a table, every comfort she had once prayed for surrounded her now. Yet peace refused to come. She sat on the edge of the bed long after the house grew quiet, staring at her hands. They were still cracked, still rough from years of scrubbing other people's lives clean. No amount of luxury could erase that truth. In the early hours of the morning, Samuel knocked softly. "I won't come in," he said from the doorway. I need you to hear everything." Ruth said nothing, but she did not tell him to leave. Samuel stood where the light barely touched him, as though afraid to step fully into her space. "I was born into wealth," he began. "But I learned early that money does not protect you from betrayal. When my parents died, relatives fought over everything: properties, accounts, influence. I became valuable only as a resource." Ruth listened, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I tried to live normally," he continued. "Every relationship was a transaction. Love always came with conditions. I started to wonder if I had ever been seen as a person." "So you disappeared," Ruth said quietly. "Yes. I gave control of my assets to lawyers and vanished. I lived among the poor not as charity, but as escape." Her chest tightened. "And I paid the price for that escape." Samuel's voice broke. "I never meant for that to happen. But it did." Silence settled again. Samuel took a breath. "When you chose to stay beneath the bridge, when you gave up work, comfort, dignity, for me, I knew I had gone too far. That is why I left. I could not let you destroy yourself for a lie." Ruth stood slowly. "Then why bring me here?" "Because you deserve the truth," he said. "Not money. Not gifts. Truth." She walked toward him, stopping just short. "You should have trusted me," she said. "I loved you without knowing who you were. You did not trust me enough to know who I could be." Samuel lowered his head. "I don't want your wealth," Ruth continued. "I don't want apologies wrapped in silk. I want to know if the man under the bridge was real, or if he disappears now that I know the truth." Samuel met her eyes, raw honesty shining through. "He was the truest version of me," he said. "And I am terrified you will never see him again." Ruth exhaled slowly. "This truth does not comfort me," she said. "But it frees me." She turned back toward the bed. "I will stay here, for now. Not because of what you have, but because I need space to understand what we were." Samuel nodded, tears silent on his face. Change had begun, not with forgiveness, not with reunion, but with truth laid bare and unsoftened. Morning arrived quietly, as though the house itself feared disturbing Ruth. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, falling across polished floors and furniture chosen for beauty rather than comfort. Ruth rose slowly, every movement heavy with thought. For the first time in weeks, her body was rested, but her heart was not. She wandered through the house alone. Each room felt carefully arranged, untouched by chaos, untouched by hunger. She imagined Samuel living here before he disappeared, walking these halls surrounded by wealth yet starved of sincerity. The thought softened something in her chest, even as it reminded her of the pain he had caused. In the garden, Samuel sat on a low stone bench, his shoulders slumped in a way she recognized. She approached quietly. "I used to watch you sleep under the bridge," she said. "You never rested fully. Even then." Samuel looked up, startled, then smiled faintly. "I don't sleep well anywhere." Ruth sat beside him, leaving space between them. "I need to understand something," she said. "Did you ever think I would ask you to leave the bridge if I knew the truth?" He shook his head. "No. You would have stayed." "Exactly," she said. "You took away my choice. Samuel's eyes filled. I was afraid that if you knew, you would love me differently. Ruth considered this. You are right, she said at last. I would have loved you with less fear, with more hope. They sat in silence, the birds filling the space words could not. I don't know what love looks like after a lie, Ruth continued. But I know what it cannot be. It cannot be built on secrecy. Samuel nodded. Then let me rebuild it openly, or walk away if that is what you need. Ruth studied him carefully, searching for the man beneath the wealth, beneath the guilt. I will not move into this house, she said. Not yet. Samuel's heart sank, but he listened. I need to work again. I need to stand on my own feet, not be carried by your past or your money. I will support you, he said quickly. No, she replied gently. You will respect me. That night, Samuel drove her back to the edge of the city, not to the bridge, but to a modest rented room he had quietly arranged nearby. Ruth stood in the doorway, surprised. You remembered what mattered, she said. I learned it from you. For the first time since the truth came out, Ruth smiled. Love did not return all at once. It crept back carefully, cautious and honest. They spoke openly now, about fear, about power, about what it meant to choose someone without disguises. Change settled not in grand gestures, but in restraint. The city never noticed when Ruth began again. That was its nature. It only paid attention to beginnings when they glittered. Ruth's did not. It was quiet, almost invisible, stitched together from patience and resolve. She returned to work slowly. Not to the houses that had turned their backs on her, but to new streets, new faces, people who did not know her story. She washed clothes again, but this time she set her own terms. She charged fairly. She rested when her body demanded it. Each coin she earned felt heavier, because it was hers alone. Samuel kept his distance, as she asked. He did not arrive with gifts or solutions. He came with presence. Sometimes he walked beside her without speaking. Other times he waited nearby while she worked, learning the rhythm of her days not as a savior, but as a witness. They spoke often, honestly. They spoke of power, and how easily it could erase choice. Of love, and how easily it could be confused with rescue. Of dignity, and how fragile it became when survival was threatened. One evening, Ruth returned to the bridge alone. The space beneath it looked smaller than she remembered. Harder. Colder. She placed a portion of food beside a pillar for someone who might need it, then sat briefly where she and Samuel once shared silence. She felt no anger, only clarity. That chapter of her life had stripped her down, but it had also revealed her strength. She had loved without bargaining. She had chosen without guarantees. No wealth could take that away from her. Weeks later, Samuel asked her a question beneath the open sky. If I had never been wealthy, he said, would you still have stayed? Ruth smiled softly. I already did. He nodded, tears in his eyes. And if I lost everything tomorrow? He asked. She met his gaze steadily. Then we would begin again, honestly. They did not marry immediately. They did not rush happiness. They built it slowly, carefully, on truth rather than illusion. Samuel used his wealth differently now, not as armor, not as bait, but as a tool. He supported shelters, funded small businesses, and ensured no one beneath that bridge was invisible again. But Ruth never became rich in the way the city understood wealth. She became something rarer. She became whole. And in the end, when gold fell silent and power stepped aside, what remained was not the story of a poor woman saved by a rich man, but of a woman who chose love without knowing its reward, and earned respect that could not be bought.